Welcome, everyone, to our cybersecurity chats. I'm Jennifer Langdon from the National Cryptologic Foundation. My colleagues, Christine Harding and Mark Lepker, are here to moderate questions. Our chat topic this week is bots, battle for the internet, and it's presented by our guest, Blair Banker. Blair graduated from Purdue University with a master's in business analytics and information management before joining ECS Federal LLC as a junior cybersecurity data scientist. His current role includes building and maintaining data pipelines, supporting senior data scientists in constructing mathematical models, and assisting management with back-end and client-facing processes and applications. And if you have questions about what all that is, you can hold on to those to the end as well. All right, Blair, take it away.
All right. Well, I guess I'll share my screen here. Well, hey, everyone. My name is Blair, as Jen mentioned, and today we'll be talking about bots and the battle for the internet. Hopefully everyone learned something and we have a couple of laughs along the way. So the agenda for today, we'll touch on what are bots, how they're constructed, how you can stay safe, what's going on right now in industry and academia in terms of machine learning and how to help prevent that. And we should have some time for Q&A after. Okay, so what are bots? So a bot, spider, or crawler, and they have a few other different names, simply a software application that runs tasks over the internet. And bots account for nearly 40% of all internet traffic, which if that's the first time you've seen that statistic, it's pretty alarming. And there are good bots, like Wally. These include chat bots. I'm sure everyone has had some experience with chat bots. Web crawlers, which scan content on web pages, and I'm sure some folks have probably heard of Google, and they probably have the most sophisticated web crawler on earth. And then there are also social bots, which can be both good or bad, and we'll learn more about that later. And they are most certainly on your favorite social media platform. Okay, so bad bots. So these bots have malicious intent and are a lot of times a part of the botnet, which is basically a zombie computer army. And some of the malicious tasks these can carry out includes credential stuffing, which is brute forcing stolen usernames and passwords, web scraping, which are used for a lot of different reasons. I mean, for example, they might read all accessible paths and parameter values for web pages and APIs, cryptanalysis to gain access to encrypted messages, reverse engineering to identify system components with the intention of hacking in, and then also session analysis, which can contain page views, events, and social and e-commerce transactions. Another malicious task that these bad bots carry out are denial of service and distributed denial of service attacks. And these DDoS attacks are usually carried out by botnets. Like I mentioned, it's basically an army of computers controlled by a remote actor. And the largest botnet that we know of so far is called Zeus. And so far what we know is over 13 million computers have been infected in 196 countries. So a lot of computing power behind some of these botnets. Also, they can carry out password cracking attacks, which are similar to credential stuffing, inventory hoarding. So this kind of attack depletes goods and services without ever completing a purchase. So for an example, it'd be adding items to your basket without ever purchasing them. Also spam content, we all know what spam is, and email harvesting that crawl, for example, systems like the Usenet and internet forums, and a lot of times they're harvesting your email address with the intention to spam. And then click fraud. So a lot of advertisers pay pretty good money to, put up their web servers online and get that preferential treatment from Google. And there are some bad bots out there that just repeatedly click those, running up the tab on those advertisers. So the United States has over 50% of malicious bot activity around the world. That's, again, a pretty alarming stat if you haven't been exposed to it. But yeah, we are ground zero here in the United States in terms of malicious bot activity. And this kind of shows you the frequency of these bad bots and the various industries that they're attacking. And you can see up top there that telecom and ISPs are the most targeted industries as far as malicious bots go, followed by computing and IT, and then sports and news. And we'll get in more into that later. All right, so how are bots constructed? This is just a pretty simple data flow. So you start with an external list of seed URLs that you want to crawl in some way, shape, or form. And again, there are a lot of different techniques and tactics to execute a crawler, both good and bad, but it is really a pretty blank slate, and these can be used for a multitude of reasons. But when you have those seed URLs, you add the URL to the queue and download it and process it. And then when you have that HTML, you can look for additional links within the HTML and then also extract them. And I guess before I said that, I should have said that after you download the URL, you can process it and then store all the data from the HTML that you want. And then after you extract the links that you're interested in, you can run a process to filter over them. And if it's a link that you think you'd want to continue with and crawl further, you add it back to the queue. If not, you can, I guess, kind of dispose of it in your list of visited URLs for a later date, or just to, I guess, avoid scraping altogether. And now for a demo. So we'll see if this works. Never do a demo, right? So today we're gonna just write a really simple crawler to pull the top rated movies from IMDb. So step one, you find the kind of information you're looking for. You can inspect it, and every browser has that capability. And then for this crawler, we're going to pull the movie name, the stars in the movie, and then also the rating. And there's a lot of information online on how to do this if you're interested. So here's the Python code written in JupyterLab. I found that JupyterLab's file system's a little more simple to navigate than notebooks, but we'll just step through the code here and hopefully it works. Okay, so downloading the data, parsing it, and then creating an empty list to populate with the movie information, and then finally reading it out. So this is a very basic crawler, but you can see that we read the IMDb URL, executed some, I want to say relatively simple, some code to extract the information we need, but I've ran a few of these. So I understand you got to take baby steps with this stuff. But yeah, you can see that it populated all of the movies from the page there on IMDb.
Hey, Blair, this is Mark. What you just showed me was very eye-opening. Can you address for our attendees? I mean, this looks so easy to do, and these bots can be, both good and bad. Can you maybe address a little bit, Blair, on the access to these tools and how that increases the opportunity for the threat agent to cause havoc?
Okay, absolutely. So a lot of sites, now that bots have really grown in prevalence over the last few years, have started blocking or disallowing bots or crawlers on their site. So if this is something you're interested in and you decide you want to write your own crawlers and pull movies or scrape Craigslist or what have you, there is a way to check if the website allows bots or not. And that is adding robots.txt to the end of the URL, and that should show you whether or not the website allows crawlers. And hopefully you don't run into what I ran into, but there was a site that I wrote a script for, and the way that some of these sites are set up is if you ping them or if you hit the site more than X amount of times in a second or a minute, it just ends up blocking your IP and you no longer have access to that site. So companies and web servers are getting a little better at blocking this information, but a lot of these, bad actors are, it's one of those situations where you build a 10-foot wall and then they bring up an 11-foot ladder. So there are ways to make your script to sleep for in seconds or minutes or hours or days, and a lot of bad actors are circumnavigating those defenses by tweaking their script a little bit. So it's it's the Wild West out here, and we need good folk like yourself to help join in and fight the good fight. All right, so how to stay safe here, and hopefully everyone enjoys these next couple slides. So, is your computer infected? We'll go over some telltale signs here. So obviously, if your computer is crashing randomly, you have a problem, and it could be incompatibility between your software and hardware. But if you don't make many changes to your PC, it very well could be malware. Or if your computer is running slow. Now, this isn't the best indication that you have malware on your computer, but it's usually due to you're running too many programs, your hard drive's full, or your software is out or needs to be updated. But it could be that malware is bogging down your processes and consuming your memory. Oh, this one's fun. I'm sure at least a couple people here have had some random messages from friends and family. But this is a good indication that you've been infected. And if this happens to you, go ahead and log out of all your accounts, change all your passwords, and enable two-factor authentication if you can. Next, we have unfamiliar changes. So this could be new files popping up in your file system, new icons on your desktop, or it could be the home page on your web browser is configured differently or something like that. So this is where you want to try to remember your digital file system here and how you set up everything. And if you can identify a change that you don't remember making, it could definitely save you some time and money. And I mean, these usually are installed when you accidentally click on a malicious link or a pop-up window, or if it could be a potentially unwanted program or PUP that comes along with downloading a questionable app. And there's a lot of information out there on different apps and app stores that have some less than desirable traits that go along with them. Okay, moving on, pop-ups. Also a pretty good indicator that you might have a problem on your hands. Oh, this is a good one. So, this actually happened to me a couple of years ago. I was working on my red team skills and didn't properly sandbox it. So there was a leak, and it was a pretty old piece of malware, but it locked up my AV firewall, and that is not fun to fix. But if you can't access your control panel, antivirus, or firewall, that's usually a pretty good sign that you've been infected. And again, this just kind of goes to show that these bad guys are getting better. They're writing programs and scripts that can bypass antivirus and firewall. And we'll talk a little bit more about firewalls and antivirus later. Some other indications: increased internet traffic. I mean, this is for anyone that's running a web server. So if you have a spike in internet traffic, it may be a sign that you have a denial of service attack on your web server. And then lastly, even if everything's working perfectly with your PC, it's still not a bad idea to run an antivirus scan or schedule those, even better. But the best malware will not indicate that it's there at all. So just something to keep in mind is even if everything looks fine, and there's still a chance of compromise. Okay, so how to protect your computer. So both firewall and antivirus are critical, and that is a part of the concept of defense in depth, right? So if you're building a castle, or your computer is your castle, you want to have perimeter wall, you want to have a nice gate that allows people in and out, you probably want to have some archers or something going around the castle and making sure that no one's gotten in. Also, system updates. I know we all love to ignore those, in the middle of our day, but these are critical. They patch security holes and remove unnecessary features. And again, if you can automate this, I would highly recommend doing that as much as possible. And then password management, another critical aspect of maintaining a healthy digital life. It's recommended that you change these every 30, 60, or 90 days, depending on the account. Obviously, if it's an account that doesn't have very much of your personal information or bank account information, 90 days should be okay. But for some of those more sensitive accounts, you want to rotate those as much as you can. And also try using passphrases instead of passwords. I read a paper pretty recently that it basically dictated that you want a longer password is more effective than a complex password. Because the way that a lot of these password crackers work is, they iterate through every letter, number, and character for the first character place, and then they repeat for the second, and then repeat for the third. And then I think by the time you get to 15 characters or so in your passphrase, it becomes unfeasible for a lot of these password crackers. And then also, again, use two-factor authentication whenever available. Try to remember to reboot your devices daily. This will refresh your system resources, turn on sleep mode if you aren't using it, and this may also help you keep someone off your laptop or going in and posting something on social media that you wouldn't want to have posted. Something as basic as that. And if you reboot your device regularly, you'll also be able to tell if it's rebooting correctly or if it's crashing unexpectedly. And then here we have disk cleanup. So this cleans your temporary and extra language files, along with files with large attachments and a lot more. This can help remove a potentially malicious file before it executes. Ideally, it would pull it out before it executes. A lot of malware executes as soon as it's on your system, but there are some out there that just kind of hibernate. So if you run a disk cleanup, that may clear out some of those files. And then here, just backing up your data. I hope no one's ever lost an important project or presentation. That unfortunately happened to me in college, and it was because I didn't back up my data. It's a lot easier now with the cloud. If it's important, I highly recommend either putting it in the cloud, or if it's a lot more sensitive, having a hard drive or a flash drive. And when it comes to hard drives and flash drives, it's also critical not to use storage devices that you don't know where they came from, because that is another attack vector for bad actors. Well, clearing your browser history and cache speeds up your computer and can potentially remove malicious files stored in your cache. And then to kind of wrap it up here, you guys have to be vigilant. Mark and I were talking before the call. There are a lot of bad actors out there that are totally geared towards just trying to pull as much of your personal information as possible and then using that against you. And that is also true for disinformation, where the information economy is based around keeping your eyeballs on the screen. And there are a lot of unscrupulous sources that they're willing to do whatever it takes to keep you engaged. So having a compass that points north and checking all your facts and checking your sources is more important now than ever. And there's a documentary on Netflix right now that really highlights the issue pretty well, and that's called The Social Dilemma. If anyone gets a chance to watch that, I highly recommend it. Okay, so hopefully everyone will remember at least one or two things from those previous slides. But we need to segue to get a little more serious here. But Thomas Jefferson once stated that an informed citizenry is at the heart of a dynamic democracy. And, we're seeing a lot of these issues with disinformation playing out now. I mean, I don't like to get too political, but the election in 2016 really kind of opened our eyes. We saw a lot of botnet traffic coming out of Russia, and it's not just Russia. It's there are a lot of different companies or countries rather that are participating in this, but it's a pretty serious time in terms of the information that we're all consuming through social media and online. But yeah, we're living in the information age, but it is rapidly becoming the disinformation age. So again, we need to stay vigilant. And to tie that into machine learning, in 2017, a team from Arizona State released a seminal paper on fake news detection using machine learning, and that has since been built upon by a team from Indiana University. The off-cited paper, The Spread of Low Credibility Content by Social Bots, and the abstract states the massive spread of digital misinformation has been identified as a major threat to democracies. And they found that identified low credibility content as websites identified credible third-party news and fact-checking organizations. And they found that these sources mimic news media outlets without adhering to professional standards of journalistic integrity. They then go further to assert that bots played a critical role in driving the viral spread of disinformation. Some of the techniques they used were leveraging retweets and also mentioning influential users on the platform. And I have a video here from Pew Research that I really think sums this up pretty well. And it's a little over 4 minutes long, but I think it's a pretty good watch here. So, is that coming through?
So far.
Bots. They're all around us, and they can serve a number of purposes, both good and bad. They're in our homes, they're on our phones, and they're common on social media platforms like Twitter. But just how common are they? Pew Research Center estimates that as much as 2/3 of tweeted links to popular websites are generated by bots, not humans. Now that's only tweeted links to popular websites. But how did we determine that bots are responsible for sharing so much content on Twitter? And what exactly is a bot? Broadly speaking, a bot is a software application that can complete automated tasks, often replacing the need for humans to do them. Ever ask the voice assistant on your phone to play that song you've been super into lately? Yep, that's a bot. Bots appear in all sorts of digital spaces, and people interact with them all the time, sometimes without even realizing it. It's no secret that there are bots on Twitter. There are Twitter bots that can send emergency alerts after an earthquake or post what's new on Netflix. And then there may be bots that act with malicious intent, trying to spread misinformation or sow confusion. Our study of Twitter bots focused on automated accounts that tweet or retweet links to content around the web without human intervention. This is part of a larger research agenda at Pew Research Center to better understand the flow of information online and the impact it has on society. To measure how pervasive bots are in sharing links to external sites on Twitter, we started by collecting 1.2 million English language tweets containing links using Twitter's streaming API over a 47-day period in the summer of 2017. This gave us a random sample of public tweets, up to 1% of all public posts each day. We wanted to know both how many of these links were shared by bot accounts and what kind of content bots were sharing. Was it mostly news? Was it sports? Or was it something else entirely? To figure this out, we wrote a computer program that followed each tweeted link to its destination, then saved the location of that page in a database. We then isolated nearly 3,000 websites that were shared most frequently. After we had a list of tweets with links to these most popular sites, we counted how many came from bots. Sounds easy, right? Well, in practice, it's fairly complicated. First, classifying 1 million tweets by hand takes a long time. Second, relatively few automated Twitter accounts identify themselves as bots. And it's not easy to know if an account is a bot or not. So, in order to determine which of the accounts in our sample were, we turned to a tool called Botometer. Now, if you're wondering what Botometer is, it's a machine learning algorithm developed by researchers at Indiana University and the University of Southern California. It uses over 1,000 pieces of information about a Twitter account to determine if that account is likely a bot. This information includes the age of the account, who they follow, the content of their tweets, among other things. Also, rather than simply declaring a Twitter account to be a bot or a human, Botometer actually gives each account a score between 0 and 1, but researchers like ourselves are the ones to decide where to draw the line between human and bot by choosing a threshold score. So to ensure Batometer was a reliable tool for our study, we tested it using data from human coders who classified over 300 accounts as automated or not. We then had Batometer classify the same accounts at various thresholds to determine the most accurate score to use for our full sample of tweets. By the way, you can see all of these tests in the methodology section of our report. In the end, we estimated that automated accounts are responsible for sharing about 2/3 of tweeted links in our sample. Comparatively, 2/3 of tweeted links to popular news and current event sites were also shared by bots. And overall, bots were most likely to share links to sites that focused on sports or adult content. So, now you know how we identified bots on Twitter, but what we can't say from this study is whether the links shared by bot accounts contain truthful information or not, or the extent to which human users interacted with content posted by suspected bots. It is important to remember that not all bots are nefarious, and some of them may even play a valuable role in the social media ecosystem. But we'll let you decide that for yourself. To learn more about our methods and about what types of content bots are sharing on Twitter, check out our report, Bots in the Twitter Sphere, at pewresearch.org/twitterbots.
Okay, I hope everyone found that interesting. But yeah, that about wraps it up. Here are my references, and thank you everyone for listening in.
Right. Well, I tell you what, Blair, that again, like I said earlier, is definitely eye-opening, especially that Pew Research. I didn't realize that there was that much activity out there to look at bots and see how they're working and et cetera. So I will definitely be doing some individual looking at some of these activities. And like the gentleman said, some bots are really good. But his comment about you don't know if what the bot is displaying is truthful information or if it's information that is meant to skew how you approach a problem or how you decide on a problem by providing that misinformation or disinformation. So very eye-opening presentation today, Blair. Thank you very much.
Of course, glad to be here. This is the National Cryptologic Foundation is doing a lot of really cool stuff, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
So in our attendees today, here you've got somebody who's actually working in that context, and a lot of our sessions here highlight the fact that there are lots of cryptologic jobs out in the environment that may not seem like a normal job for a computer scientist, because maybe it goes beyond that. And that's kind of the point we try to make with cybersecurity jobs. They're just not all about computer science. Here, Blair is researching this type of information. So Blair, if you don't mind just sharing maybe 3 or 4 minutes of how you landed your position and what are some of the things that inspired you to seek this particular aspect of cybersecurity.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so it was definitely not a traditional route into cyber for me. So for undergraduate, I like to joke that I majored in basketball. I played college basketball out in San Diego, and that took up a lot of my time, and I ended up graduating with a business administration degree before working as a registered investment advisor. And at that job, I really fell in love with data, just looking at market data and understanding, I guess, just what's going on in the world, both from a microeconomic standpoint and macro. And then after that, I moved over to work for a cybersecurity company based out of Chicago. And that is where the cyber bug bit me. I spent almost 2 years there and spent a lot of time on YouTube and Wikipedia chasing rabbits. And then, towards the end of that, I realized that I really wanted to pursue this full time and get my master's, and ended up going to Purdue for the Business Analytics and Information Management Master's, which is essentially Purdue's data science degree. And had a great time, met a lot of great folk. It's a great program. And towards the end of that, Mark reached out and asked if I would like to give a presentation for National Cryptologic Foundation, and I said absolutely. And after that, I decided that I really wanted to move into the world of security analytics and picked up the CompTIA Security Plus certification. And yeah, I guess the rest is kind of history from there. But security analytics it's a great area to be right now. There are so many problems in the security industry, and there are so many threats that there's just so much work to do, and it's really interesting work. I'm working on a project right now that is it'll hopefully help analysts reduce their alert fatigue. A lot of security operations center analysts are work to the bone right now, and they get burnt out pretty quickly. So we're working on a risk-based vulnerability management program, and it's really, really interesting work. And on the team we have people from all walks of life, right? So we have people with no security experience, but they may understand one aspect really, really well. And then we also obviously have security experts that kind of make sure that we stay between the lines here. But it's it's a really cool industry to be a part of. And yeah, at the end of the day, you can sleep easy. Not to discourage anyone from pursuing a career path, but I have friends that ended up in industries that they're not super passionate about, I guess. They're just, at the end of the day, they're like, I'm not sure what I'm doing really is making any sort of difference here. And I sympathize with them, but I certainly can't empathize, because the work we're doing is pretty cool.
Cool. We do have a question that popped in. It says, you mentioned earlier that Google scrapes, but then there are sites that don't allow bots. How does Google get around that? What are the advantages of site allowing or disallowing bots?
That is a great question. So Google's, it's the famous PageRank algorithm, and I guess so. Scraping is a pretty general term. What Google's doing is they're looking at how many sites another site is connected to. And I think I'm explaining this correctly. So they're not actually scraping the individual site. They're looking at the connections. And I hope that answered part one of that question. But then what are the advantages of a site allowing or disallowing bots? So I guess an advantage would be awareness for your site. If you allow scraping and you're not worried about bad actors, your information is going to be out there. It'll get out there a lot easier. And then disallowing bots, this ties back into denial of service and distributed denial of service. So again, and this happened to me where I was just starting out writing my web crawlers, and I accidentally scraped they had a throttle on their site, so you could only scrape it X amount of times before they just blocked your IP address. So the program ran for all of 5 seconds before timing out, and I went back to the site to see what the problem was, and I was blocked. So by disallowing bots, these sites can help protect their web servers and eventually critical assets. But I think for most companies, the disadvantages of allowing bots outweighs the advantages. So I think a lot of companies are now on board with trying to block a lot of that malicious traffic.
Well, we want to thank Blair for a wonderful cyber chat, and thank you all who came and participated with us. Thanks again for coming with us. Bye-bye.